it for you and your granddaughters to pass on as you see fit.
You are wiser than I believed you to be, Alicent Hightower.
A true queen counts the cost to her people.
And yet you toil still in service to men. Your father, your husband, your son. You desire not to be free, but to make a window in the wall of your prison. Have you never imagined yourself on the Iron Throne?
Team Rhaenys Targaryen. Let's talk about it with this quick coffee break thought. Welcome back to Coffee Rhetoric, and I am your host, Tiffany J, back with a very quick coffee break thought. I don't have any coffee with me right now. I didn't make any. I had some earlier, but that's neither here nor there. That scene of that nice little drag you just saw was from this past Sunday's episode, penultimate episode of House of the Dragon. And that was Rhaenys Targaryen, cousin to the king, and I guess cousin-in-law to Alicent Hightower, who she was just speaking to, and who Alicent had just locked in the room. But anyway, I'm not here to give a whole recap. That was a nice little drag. Actually, that entire monologue between the two of them has been living rent free in my head since Sunday because I loved it. That was just the perfect drag that any woman could say to what's essentially a pick me. But anyway, I wanted to come in. I thought I might have some words about Kanye West and Candace and Onika Mirage and all these people, but fuck them. I don't even know where to start because this is just right off the cuff. But for those of you who don't know or who haven't been watching, House of the Dragon is the messy, salacious, and tantalizing spin-off and prequel to Game of Thrones. And it delves into the history of the Targaryen family dynasty that we have come to know on Game of Thrones through the character of Daenerys Targaryen. The last, well, technically she is not the last she didn't turn out to be the last Targaryen. But anyway, we've come to know the Targaryens through that character from Game of Thrones. But with House of the Dragon, it takes place about, I don't know, maybe about 200 years before the events that happened in Game of Thrones. It delves into what essentially led to the war, or what's known as the Dance of the Dragons, I believe. But that scene, it's kind of that moment you saw between those two women. It's kind of everything's coming to a crescendo, it's the events leading up to essentially the war between two different factions of the Targaryen family, the Greens and the Blacks. Like I said, that scene has been living rent free in my head since Sunday. Because everybody talks about, we talk about Damon, or as Black House of the Dragon watchers have been calling him, Damonte Targaryen. We talk about Matt Smith's portrayal of Daemon Targaryen. We've been talking about them dubious dark-haired children. We've been talking about Rhaenyra. Everybody's buzzing about that foot scene, just buzzing about everything. But I think for me, since the beginning, actually, Rhaenys Targaryen has been one of the most fascinating characters on the show, the most underrated. It's kind of like she's kind of like a slow burner of a character, but she is fascinating. She's the queen that never was, and even with just her body language, I think Eve Best, the actress that plays Rhaenys Targaryen, does a really great job, just even with her body language, with her just kind of sitting there and watching things unfold during social events. Her body language just gives jaded and cynical, and just her, and I mean that in a good way, kind of jaded. Her body language just gives, you know, fed up with the bullshit. Like, I know what's what. These men are full of shit. I'm over it, so I'm just gonna sit here and look cute because I can see the bullshit from a mile away. And Rhaenys she was called the queen that never was, because when a successor, when they were choosing a successor to sit on the Iron Throne, to succeed their grandsire, their grandfather. It was down to her and her weak-willed cousin, her weak-willed, what do they call him? Beta male, beta male cousin. That term is so silly, but it came down to her and her weak-willed, sniveling milk toast cousin, Viserys Targaryen, and of course, he ended up taking over the Iron Throne because he's a man. So that's why she's called the queen that never was, and it's kind of like, people knows, you know. There had been rumblings that Rhaenys probably would have been a far better leader than Viserys was, but she gets what it is. She understands how the patriarchy works, and then she's just kind of like, whatever, I'm over it. It is what it is. I'm not really um pressed about the issue anymore, because especially when you see how being king has slowly, well, quickly, when you factor in um the jarring time jumps on a House of the Dragon. But you see how leading and being king has literally eaten away at her cousin. But anyway, enough of all that ramblings. When she told Alicent, you toil still in service to men. um don't you want to be free? And you make a window in the wall of your own prison, and that was perfect, because I think that is what a lot of indoctrinated women tend to do. We support decisions against our own interests, and we uphold and exalt toxic men who just kind of make a mess of the world and just make a mess of things. But there are women who are just so eager to uphold the fuck shit, right? The patriarchy. And the actress that plays Alicent Hightower, the queen consort to Viserys, Olivia Cook, sorry, I had to think of her name. She does an amazing job as Alicent Hightower, the young actress that played the teen, and then the adult Alicent, who's played by Olivia Cook. They both did an amazing job. The way they cast the young actresses against the older actresses, I think they did a wonderful job with that. And Olivia Cook, during an interview, she mentioned how the showrunners, when they were trying to offer insight about how she should approach the character of Alicent Hightower, she said that she was essentially told to play the role like a Trump supporter, a female Trump supporter, and I get it. And she said, she got it, but she didn't want to just out and out approach the role in that kind of simple, cut and dry manner, which I'm glad that she made the executive decision to do the role the way that she saw fit. She basically she said she didn't want to give any mental real estate to their suggestion, and she wanted to add more layers to the character of Alicent Hightower. And I'm glad she did, because you know what, I love a really good, complex, layered villain origin story. You know, you look at this, you look at characters like the evil queen, and from these fairy tales, and from the Walt Disney movie, and from Grimm fairy tales. I love a really good villain origin story. These movies where that take like a darker approach to fairy tales, where they're giving you background about why the evil queen is evil, or why this character became so dark. I have a good villain origin story myself, right? We all, if you know, if you're a woman who's just over it all, you've seen it all, you've heard it all. We most of us do have who's over the bullshit and who sees through the bullshit. Most of us do have really good villain origin stories. So I think that's why I always like the kind of darker characters in these kinds of fantasy fairy tale series, and these interesting characters. And I think Rhaenys Targaryen is definitely an interesting character. She's most assuredly a very feminist character, which I love. And I love that they didn't shy away from that, which you can tell this go round with the showrunners on House of the Dragon. You can tell that they brought in women writers, and they have women's input on the some of the female characters on the show, which I'm glad. But yes, Alicent Hightower, the actress that plays the adult Alicent, she said she didn't want to make the character that cut and dry. Um, she wanted to bring more complex layers to why Alicent comes of age and essentially ends up being the way she is. Um, she said she wanted to go a little bit of a different route than just being, you know, mimicking what we see when we see uh, kind of like these female kind of Fox News pundits we see on TV, and these pro female Trump supporting loonies. She didn't want to make it that caricaturish. Ugh, say that three times. She didn't want to go that cartoonish with the character. She wanted to bring more layers. Like, what has this indoctrination by her father and by the powerful men around her, what has this all done to her psyche? Show how that indoctrination slowly just kind of uh not so much, yes, it made her a believer. It socialized her to believe that men were better rulers, and that women uh, weren't meant to rule. Yes, she was very heavily socialized by her father. She also wanted to take a different route, give more layers to it, and show that yes, she was socialized, but she wanted to convey how that kind of socialization can make a woman become just really bitter over time, and twisted, and what those kinds of just very black and white gender roles can do to a woman who doesn't really have, who's not fully autonomous, and who doesn't get to make her own decisions. Because, you know, in the land of Westeros, women are they're just there to be bred, um and to produce heirs, male heirs, for powerful men, sometimes to their own detriment. We looked at the I believe it was the first episode of House of the Dragon was very jarring because Rhaenyra's own mother went through hell, several miscarriages and stillborn births, trying to produce a male heir for her king husband, because Rhaenyra was the one female child that they had, and heaven forbid if something should happen to the king that a young woman inherits the throne. Can't have that. So I've got to keep my wife pregnant and knock her up and make her have all of these high risk pregnancies and births. And we saw that jarring scene where he just kind of makes the decision for what should happen when she's on the birthing bed having this very, very, very difficult birth. And it's like her husband makes the decision and tells the macer to basically to perform a cesarean, but basically rip the baby out of her without her consent. And we all saw how brutal and how that went. And I just feel like these are all just very good kind of metaphors for present day real life shit that's going on now. It's kind of like you look at things like the overturning of uh oh god, abortion rights for women, Roe versus Wade, I'm sorry, the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and how all of these right-wing conservative men who wouldn't even know where the clitoris was if it slapped them in the face, um, thinking they can make decisions for women's bodies, not because they really or truly care about the welfare and well being of children and babies, because if they did, they wouldn't have thrown young children and babies into cages for being born to immigrant parents, right? These men don't really necessarily care about women and children. They just care about the power of being able to uh, dictate what happens to women's bodies, and that's exactly what's been going on House of the Dragon. You have you have men dictating what women should be doing with their bodies. And like before she passed and gave had that difficult birth, we see Rhaenyra's mother, Emma, tells her basically, our battle, the men, they have these wars, they battle, they shake their swords at each other. Our battle, our war is on the birthing bed. Essentially, um that's what our role is. We're just here to produce male heirs, uh to let our husbands pump and dump on top of us and use us as uh cum receptors and try our best to produce male heirs for them and all this other shit. So it's just very good. And I just really love that scene between the two of them, because that's Rhaenys called out Alicent and said, girl, you're socialized. Your father has basically pimped you out and had you sidle up to all of these old men thrice your age. Because right, the first king prior to Viserys, basically Viserys's grandfather, she had him, if you kind of do any research on the source material, Alicent's father even had her trying to sidle up to Viserys's grandfather when he fell ill. And then, when he died, it's almost like, okay, well, now you need to sidle up um, next to this old man and try to get in his good. Basically, essentially, now you need to use your innocence to seduce this old man, get some power for our family. So it's almost like he's charted his daughter's comings and goings every step of the way. Like, this is what you have to spend your teen years, your formative years as a young lady doing. You need to seduce this old man and get our family some power. Meanwhile, her good friend Rhaenyra, she doesn't kind of, even though she's supposed to live by all of these strict patriarchal rules, she kind of still does her own thing. she's like, fuck this, fuck that. I want to fuck that. I want to fuck this. I want to have these illegitimate children with this hot uh God, this hot, essentially this hot cop who's part of the what do they call it? Um, not the Lord Commander, but the king, the people that essentially he's like the captain of the police squad in Westeros. I forget the actual term for it, but yeah, Rhaenyra kind of gets to live. She kind of still has, even though her father tries to force her to marry this lord or that lord, or you have to marry, you have to do that. Rhaenyra just kind of does. She's kind of been doing her own thing, and it's just like, well, I'm a fuck who I want to fuck, and she kind of maintains autonomy over her own sexuality and her own body. And Alicent, they fall out as childhood friends, and she kind of comes to resent Rhaenyra for that. I think that's where some of her resentment comes from, because she didn't get to have the luxury of breaking the rules. Rhaenyra, who's the princess, gets to, and her father vouches for her and doesn't punish her for it. And I feel like maybe instead of being directing her ire to her own father for dictating what she needs to be doing with her own sexuality and body, it's like Alicent directs her ire to her former friend. So that is what I think. And I feel like Alicent's been living in just this kind of I think I saw this phrase um during an interview with Olivia Cook, that she's been living in this straitjacket of oppression, of male dominance, of patriarchy. And so the actress who plays the adult Alicent, she wanted to, it's like, okay, I'll take the show note of showing that I'm acting like an indoctrinated, socialized Karen, but at the same time, she wanted to bring humanity to Alicent, and she wanted to also kind of show the struggles of womanhood, and which a lot of women who grow up in these conservative families, and they're told you should marry this way, you should have children, you should do this, you should do that. She kind of wanted to, she didn't just want to make Alicent out just to be an evil right wing extremist queen. She wanted to give Alicent some humanity, and yeah, and show why she is the way she is, because we kind of see her become like this fake pious overly religious person, even though she's behind the scenes doing all this immoral shit. And I get it. It's kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to be super pious and super religious, because I feel like that is one of the ways that Allison is able to have some kind of control or autonomy over her existence, since her existence has pretty much been dictated by men. Her roles in life has been dictated by her father, and then she essentially has to act in service to her trash sons, and then she has to act in service to the lords of the realm and the council. So I think being like a fake devout Catholic is it's just kind of like a way that Alicent can have some kind of control. That's what I think. And because she's behind the scenes doing some shady shit, and the shadiest of them all. And even still, she's repulsed at having to do this thing, because even as queen, it's like, I'm, falling to the whims of a fucking creepy guy. And, in order to get some kind of power, I have to fucking show this weirdo my feet while he jacks off. Yeah, that was pretty gross. So yeah, these are just some very interesting characters. And, that's just the thing that Alicent has had to contend with, and why she is the way she is, and why she's kind of like the ultimate Karen. She's like a medieval Karen, essentially. You see her villain origin story and why she is the way she is, and why she, all that conditioning and indoctrination. You get it. It's just like, well, these are the things I have to do to get what I want. I have to let a creepy guy look at my bare feet, and I have to kind of I have to perform femininity, because in this day and age in real life, you have all these coaches, these dating coaches, trying to teach women in 2022 how to be ultra feminine, and for what? In this day and age, give me a break. How to perform femininity, and for what? To uphold some fuck shit. And when I see black women doing this, especially, it's like you're sitting here mimicking some kind of these very white Victorian ideals of what womanhood is like, stop. But anyway, it's like Alicent is you she's also performing femininity. She's using her sexuality in a very feminine kind of damsel in distress way. It's like, this is gross. I have to show my bare feet and let this guy jerk it, just so I can get some information out of him. So yes, it's not easy being a woman, especially in medieval Westeros, in the world of House of the Dragon. But I just wanted to kind of try to find a way to untangle the Gordian knot that is Alicent Hightower, and how Rhaenys Targaryen basically pulled her slip and called her out and said, "Girl, you're doing all this shit, and you're cutting up, and you're usurping the throne, and you're making all these questionable, shady moves. You're doing all this in service to men who don't think you fucking matter, and who don't think you're anything more than a cum receptacle to produce heirs and children for us, for men who don't value or look at you as more than anything than a whole to push out their male heirs. And yet you're still sitting here exalting them, working against your own interests, essentially, as a woman. Don't you want to be free from all that fuck shit? It's like, and honestly, oh my God, I can't even forget. I can't believe I forgot to mention her. I even kind of got why Cersei became the way she was in Game of Thrones. You kind of saw her villain origin story. And essentially, in the end, what did Cersei do? She said, "Fuck y'all, fuck them kids, fuck you, fuck you. I'm taking the power for myself." That is what Cersei Lannister ended up doing. She blew up the Sept, and she usurped the throne and took the power for herself. She just got sick and tired of acting in service to men, listening to her father, all that stuff. She essentially Cersei did all of these horrible things, but even she kind of has a villain origin story, with the whole the way gender roles functioned. Um, in the world of Game of Thrones and in Westeros, it's almost like, you know, I'll just take the power for myself and blow all these fuckers up and take over the throne myself. That is not what Alicent does. And that is why when Rennie said, you're doing all this stuff, don't you wonder what it would be like to have that power? Aren't you sick and tired of being used as a pawn? Uh, by powerful men and acting in service to their whims. Like, girl, stop. But anyway, it's getting critical. It's getting critical. And the season finale happens on Sunday. But those are my thoughts because, like I said, that one line, that one scene where Rhaenys called her out, yeah, I like that. I like that quote a lot. On that note, that is me rambling about House of the Dragon, specifically Rhaenys Targaryen and Alicent Hightower, Queen. I guess, well, since her husband's dead, Queen Mother, since her son's about to, since her rapist, weirdo son took the throne. And that's another thing, you have these women who exalt men and who act in service to men in their fuck shit and who just kind of act the fool um, in service to men. You even had Alicent, as repulsed as she is by her oldest son, that still doesn't stop her from trying to make him king and giving him even more privilege, helping him obtain even more unearned privilege and power, even though his half sister is supposed to have the throne by right. But in any event, because that is what their father wanted. But even with that, knowing how kind of repulsive her son is, it's kind of like she had that Cersei thing going. Cersei knew that her son Joffrey was a hateful, malignant piece of shit. She knew it, but she still helped him become the teen king, and she knew he was horrible. And likewise, Alicent Hightower knows that her son is wretched, but she still helps him obtain more unearned privilege and power. She knows that he's a serial sexual assaulter, rapist. I don't know, because you can't really say the R word on YouTube, but she knows that her son is a sexual predator. And, one of his victims, she kind of becomes kind of like a RAPE apologist. And she gives the young woman, first she gaslights the young woman, and then she gives her the equivalent moon tea, which is like Plan B, which is like Westeros's version of a Plan B pill. She gaslights the young woman, gives her some money, and then tells her to fuck off and forget that you were just sexually assaulted by my shitty son. So yeah, she even becomes an apologist for her son's repugnant behavior towards women. And a lot of women do that. They act in ways, doing all of this questionable stuff to placate the toxic behaviors of men. So yes, this is some really good stuff. I can go on and on and on, but I probably shouldn't. I should end this at some point. But I don't know. I just wanted to get in here and unpack that scene a little bit and why these women are the way they are, because it was just kind of stewing in my brain and I wanted to get it out. And I still have actually that other video with the watch party coming. I promise it's coming. I started editing it down, but I got busy. But it's coming. And I also wanted to chit chat a little bit about that. I still need, because that's living rent free in my head too. The shit with the foot fetish and Laris and why he's so fucking creepy and ew. But anyway, those are my thoughts about Alicent Hightower and Rhaenys Targaryen, and that scene where Rhaenys gently dragged Alicent by her royal tendrils. And on that note, until next time, bye.
You can smell the shit from 5 miles away.